Good morning and welcome. Let's roll call, please.
Mike Berlin,
Here.
Laura Negro,
Here.
Blake Ellefson,
Here.
Pat Kinney,
Here.
Ron Stendor.
Here.
Quorum is present. Thank you. Short moment of silence, please. Thank you. We are looking to approve the agenda as given us. Do we have a motion on the floor?
I'll make a second. Blake Ellison.
We have a motion, a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Public comment?
Sorry. Glenn Carlson, Town of LaPointe Chair. I'm just here to answer any questions. We've been here many times and you've heard everything that we have to say probably, but if you want to have some discussion about our proposal, we're more than happy to answer any questions. So both the town administrator and I are here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone online?
Hi, this is Terry Barningham. I would like to make a public comment.
Oh,
So I'm Terry Barningham. I'm also the Director for Health and Human Services, and I just wanted to speak to M3, which is on the agenda for a little bit later. I just wanted to bring up the fact that on May 27th, when the proposals for the companies who had made proposals to manage our health insurance had given their proposals, one of the things M3 really emphasized when asked about it was health tourism. And Kristen had mentioned that as one of her specialties, and then had gone on to give examples of the cost savings that they have found in other jurisdictions, including what she called the dirty 20, which is the most shoppable, including colonoscopies, MRIs, mammograms, total knee, total hip. And that was, I think, very exciting to us because it was a huge cost savings. And there was also incentives that would be given to employees if they took advantage of these opportunities. And, you know, we are almost a year into this and nothing has moved as far as health tourism goes. I know Laura Negro has asked about this in the past, but I really think, in my opinion, I sat through the presentations and I was very hopeful that we would see this as some options for our employees and to realize some really hard dollar savings. So I am hoping that they have a plan to put this into motion, and that's all I have. Thank you.
thank you. Laura?
I have a different hat on right now. I have the aging unit hat on. I didn't make it onto the agenda and I didn't realize it. I've been down for 3 days with a health issue. At this point, we're in the budget as the same amount. I just want to notify you guys that I just got notified within the last couple of weeks that our meal prices are going to go up again for our Meals on Wheels piece. I don't have any numbers for it yet. I have tried to get something a little solid so I could bring it into committee and haven't been able to. So I just want to let you guys know I'm based on my gut and what I've seen in past increases. The increases could go up anywhere from 30 cents to almost 60 cents a meal, and at 20 to somewhere between 21 and 22,000 meals a year that we're feeding our elders, it's going to be a significant increase. It could be anywhere from, I should have brought my computer over, I got it on there, like $5,600 all the way up to 11,500, depending on the increase. So I just want to put that out to you guys. I may
Put
be
us on notice.
yeah, I
So
just
to
want to
speak.
let you know, because I've been working, I've changed different things and increased or decreased some cost, improve some efficiencies and kept us to where we could stay inside this, but just FYI.
But I shouldn't ask any question, but let me indulge one question.
Yeah.
Anyone, Blake?
I think I'll talk to Laura offline because I have a question as well.
Okay. Anyone else? Was that a hand up? Caitlin? No? Last time, last call. Anyone else? Okay, with that, let's move on. Approval of the finance committee meetings of August 18th and September 22nd. Do we have a motion?
This
Pat?
is Pat, I'll make the motion, but then I have a question.
This is Laura Negro. I'll second that.
We have a motion by Pat, second by Laura to approve these minutes. All those in favor say
Wait, I
aye.
got a question.
Shoot.
In there, it says there's a letter to Dan Grady and the date is July of 2021 on that. Should that be July of 2022 on the letter that's referenced in there? You were just getting hired back in July of 2021. Should that be July of 2022?
Yeah, you're right. Stan.
So I'd like to have that change made, so.
So Lori, did you get that?
So is that a motion with corrections?
Yeah, I'll make the correction that the date of the letter to Dan Grady should be July of 2022.
And I'll still second
All
that.
right. With that change, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Carver. Yep, you bet.
Oh, great. Thank you. Am I allowed to pass out a handout at this point to summarize what I'm talking about, or would you prefer not?
Thank you. Ooh.
All right. So I've been asked to come and talk a little bit about what Ashland Area Development has been working on in the last year. The board generously contributed $50,000 to our budget for 2022. And I would like very much to not only express my appreciation for that, but also to explain that by virtue of that happening, it meant that I had to spend less time doing fundraising for the basic things and services that Ashland Area Development Corporation provides to our business community throughout the county. And that is one of the main reasons why I was able to write and land 5 significant grants that are bringing money into our community for this year. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you for helping us provide our basic services and allowing me to pursue external funds to bring into Ashland County. Quick stats. We provided business consulting services to 111 businesses and nonprofits so far this year. We help people develop their business plans. We give them marketing assistance. We coach them in social media. We connect them with loans, with grants. There's quite a variety of things that people ask us to do. And this is specifically the one-on-one types of interactions we have. This is not the classes that we provide. We're about to complete our first year in giving field print appointments. So we have many employers here in Ashland County that require their workers to have a background check before they can be employed. previous to AADC signing a contract with the Field Print Corporation, which is a national company, our workers had to go to Superior or to Rhinelander to get their digital fingerprints taken to start their background checks. So this has been a very significant service that we've been able to provide. AADC does not make much money on this. It's really pretty insignificant, but the convenience for our workers and the employers so that they can hire people more quickly has been significant. 314 appointments so far this year. Diverse Business Assistance Grant. This was a grant that I applied for in January, was told in February we didn't get, and then heard in September that now we do have this money. It is almost $2 million. The Diverse Business Assistance Grant, the purpose of that is to provide money to diverse communities, especially in rural parts of Wisconsin, that have not had access to capital to help them start and to grow their businesses. And in this case, our grant will be focused on women entrepreneurs, Native American entrepreneurs, people of color, and LGBTQ community, folks that are starting business or already have businesses. Our program is going to include instruction, similar to what we did with the VETS program, the last 3 cohorts. There will be individual coaching. We will have mentoring, meaning that we will have established business owners that come from these different communities that will help mentor and support the newer entrepreneurs. But then, of course, the biggest component to this program is when they have finished the training and they have a business plan. That's the key here, that you have to have a business plan. We're just not writing checks to folks. That they can go to the bank and open up some traditional lending for them, because this money can be used as down payments, because that is a significant obstacle for newer entrepreneurs that need to buy property, buy expensive equipment, and so forth. I only have 2 years to complete this grant program. I wrote it for 3, but because we got told in September rather than in February, we only have about 2 years left to get this money out into the Ashland County and get some really significant activity going. This is a huge thing for Ashland County. I can't remember the last time we got a grant like this that is money that's going straight into the pockets of business owners and potential business owners. Entrepreneurial support in rural Ashland County. I received another grant from WEDC, and I was able to hire 2 full-time staff members that their main tasks are to go out to the rural parts of Ashland County, especially in the southern and western part of our county. So Butternut, Glidden, in Mellon, and in Bad River, and reach entrepreneurs in those communities. I have this grant is only lasting until March. I have applied for another year of it. I can apply for 3 years total. But we've been doing some significant work with that too. Childcare providers. We all know that we have a huge gap for childcare providers. I did apply for a $6 million grant and then a $3 million grant to increase the amount of childcare providers we have on the Chequamegon Bay area. So we're talking Red Cliff, Bayfield, Washburn, Ashland, and Bad River. It would have included some construction out in Bad River to extend their Head Start building so that they would also be able to have a childcare center. It included health insurance for childcare workers that are working at childcare centers, because that's a huge problem for us in that often childcare centers train their workers and then the workers leave to go work for the school district because they can get health insurance there. And then the third part of that was to be able to hire what we call childcare navigators. So if you wanted to start a childcare business, but you don't know how to start a business, you don't know how to get through the training, there are a lot of regulations that are quite daunting. We would have a staff member that would walk you through the entire process. That being said, I did not get those grants in round 1 or round 2, but I am also seeking money to be able to hire another staff member at AADC that would become their job to do. They would become a childcare navigator. Evergrow Learning Center, ADC extended a $40,000 line of credit from its revolving loan funds to improve its financial security as it rebounded from the pandemic. We have a capacity there of 85. Last week, I believe we were at 74. So we're nearing capacity on that, but we still have a lot of gaps in our community for daycare because a lot of people really prefer to have the in-home childcare providers rather than at their children at a large center. Additionally, the city of Ashland contributed $20,000 and Bayfield County contributed $40,000 from ARPA funds. And I remain very involved with the board of directors for the Evergrow Learning Center as I am their chair. We just hosted a nonprofit leadership clinic. We held it out at Northwood Tech. In a county like ours, considering we're at the very bottom of the list as far as the 72 Ashland counties, as far as our income per capita, our nonprofits, and there are many, many nonprofits in Ashland County, play a pretty significant role in filling the gap for some basic services and needs of our citizens. We realize that a lot of the folks that are serving on nonprofit boards are getting older and they're retiring from the boards, and we don't have younger people to move onto the boards. So part of this training was to help encourage, inspire, and train new people to come onto the nonprofit boards. Veteran Entrepreneurship Training Program, we're just in the last couple of months of that. We had 8 veterans from Ashland and Bayfield County go through the training program. 3 of them will be receiving money from that grant that will help them buy equipment and tools to begin their new businesses. Stone Soup Cafe, you may have heard of this. Joel Langholtz is working on starting a pay-as-you-can cafe here in the city of Ashland. He and his group are in the midst of applying for nonprofit status. Starting a nonprofit is a lengthy process. It's a much more lengthy process than starting a business when it comes to documentation. It's about 10 to 12 months to get this off the ground, any nonprofit, just to be certified as a nonprofit. Until that point, he cannot apply for technical assistance grants or any other types of grants that would help set the foundation for his new nonprofit. Therefore, he came to AADC. We've done this in the past and asked, would AADC become our fiscal agent so that we can apply for grants and manage grant money until we can do so on our own after becoming a official nonprofit. So that is another service that we're providing the community right now. This is a similar thing that we did for the Evergrow Learning Center until they became a nonprofit. We applied for grants in their name, held onto the money, distributed it until they could do it on their own. That was a lot. I talked really fast and I said a lot. I hope I didn't talk too much, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
With federal money being available for lots of things to state, local, and federal government and other things, there's been grant opportunities that have existed the last couple of years that aren't likely to exist in the coming years.
Yeah.
So in terms of workload that you anticipate going forward with the likelihood that there are fewer grant opportunities, how do you see things changing and what level of staffing might be appropriate going
Yeah.
forward after this?
That's a really good question, Pat. My feeling is I'm trying to make hay while the sun shines. This money is available and I'm going after everything that we are eligible for. I don't know how long these grants are going to continue to be out there. And these positions, most of them are grant funded, right? So I expect that there's going to come a time where I don't have the money to hit my staffing level where it's at. You think about this last January, it's just as late as this last January, I only had 3 employees at AADC, which is below where I should be significantly, right? But that included me, a person to maintain our very large building, and then 1 person to do all of our other tasks. I am in the process of doing interviews this week to hire employee 8 and employee 9. And so we've tripled our staff so far in 2022. And I'm raising money for that 10th position, which would be the childcare navigator, which would put us at a total of 10. We're not going to be able to maintain 10 on our normal budgets because, of course, we don't sell anything. All our services are free that we provide. The only thing that we do have is the rent that comes from leases in our building. So we do depend on grants. We do depend on contributions from local governments. All of that money, being that we're a nonprofit, gets reinvested back into our business community. We're not interested in making a lot of money and putting it into account. In fact, we had a board meeting yesterday and my board members were talking about, okay, these grants are helping us. How do we make sure that all of this money is going to where it's needed the most right now? And of course, the grants specify a lot of that for us and we don't have a lot of leeway, but it's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but I expect that it will go down. I also expect that the needs in Ashland County for our businesses are going to change as we rebound from the pandemic. I have so many people calling me on the phone saying that they either live here, they live somewhere else, but they want to start or expand a business in this area and what services do we have available. The landscape is changing really quickly for entrepreneurship.
At the last meeting, we had some discussion as a committee about the committee providing more direction going forward on economic development. I believe that's a discussion that this committee should have. So there are some things that I would like to be considered on economic development that we need to get it on an agenda so that we can talk about it in the meeting. But then we would also need to talk about if we would, ask the ADC to in some ways support those activities with the things that we would like to see worked on. And then somehow that would have to get fit into the picture too. But we really should have that discussion much sooner than later. So you can plan your activity, especially with the anticipation of less funds at some point going
Right.
forward.
Right. I think it's important to note too, that a lot of the projects that we've worked on in the last several years, we don't get paid for directly. The work that we did on Evergrow Learning Center, any of the work that we did with the Lake Superior Science Center, there's been many projects where we have not received any money for the time that I've spent or any of the services we've provided. These grants are the exception because we are now being reimbursed for some of our time, which helps a lot, but that still doesn't cover all the other things that we have to do. We're just running faster. Yes, sir.
I want to thank you for all you've done with the little bit that you've had for funds, but I have a couple questions. Well, actually, have you worked with the chamber? Have they given you referrals for people who've called in asking for assistance with businesses as they're moving into the area and such?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Let me think. The brain fog is fun when I have these moments. Go ahead. I'll see if I can think of it.
So on the diverse business assistance grant, are you adding staff on that piece, or is that going to be done by those existing businesses that are going to be able to help guide these people? And then who's approving those funds that get dispersed?
Okay, that's a good question. I will be adding 2 new staff that is paid for by the grant itself. That's part of the grant. As far as the businesses themselves, that the new businesses, if I understood your question correctly, they will not be paying for any of the services, but we will have volunteer mentors who are involved in the program that are helping to support and share their skills with the brand new entrepreneurs. And your third question was what, Blake?
So just right now, it was kind of about who approves, but I actually had another one on top of that. So let me
Okay.
just add these. So you kind of gave me who's going to be approving these business loans that are not loans, but they're kind of going to be free money before the bank loans. And then the second is, I'm a white male. If we're unable to find enough people to apply that are minority, whether that's women, whether that's Native American, whether that's any of the other minorities, are we willing to add white males into this conversation?
Okay. The first part of the question is, who's going to be approving the distribution of the funds? A review committee is being formed right now that will involve people that have lending experience. Probably not from people that are involved in banks right now because they'll have a conflict of interest. But retired bankers who are not representing banks at this point. We already have at least one volunteer, Chris Iverson, who is the retired president of the Bank of Drummond. She volunteers at AADC to help us with some of these more complicated financial decisions that we make when it comes to lending money, because that's not my background. I don't have that strong of a financial background. But we'll have a committee probably made up of 7 people that represent these communities, the business community, and also the financial part of it. They'll be reviewing the business plans and giving their thumbs up on whether this would be a good candidate to receive grant money to serve as down payments to get the traditional loans. The traditional loans could come from commercial banks, could come from other CDFIs like tribal CDFIs, or from revolving loan fund accounts that some of the nonprofits in the areas like AADC, Northwest Regional Planning Commission, also Wisconsin's DOA has some loans available. And as far, the next part of the question was if the people in these diverse communities do not, we don't have enough interest in order to spend all this money, then that question would have to go back to the DOA who actually created the grant program. Yep.
It wasn't a question I had, it was more of a comment. And as we go through these meetings and decide there is some guidance we would like to give Carver, we have to remember that if we're doing this, we also have to give some funding. Because it's great to give a whole bunch of, we'd like to see this, but if there's no funding behind it, and if there's not a direct path or a grant that we've seen that may help with it, then it's just pushing more stuff on someone who is already doing as much as possible with the funding pool that they have. So, and I understand how it is having to go back to grant funders and have to ask to go outside of the grant scope at first. So thank you for all you do.
So as Pat was talking about, economic development is really something I feel like is not been prioritized. And so what we're kind of saying in this county board is that we want to focus on it. Like right now, there's a discussion of a group of community members between the hospital, doctors, and other local communities about trying to bring a wellness center with a pool, right? Because our population needs that, right?
Yes.
So those are the kind of things. And had we been ready 2 years ago, there was a ton of grant money that we could have got to pay for that facility. And it was not fully developed as a plan, so we missed out on that, right? And so I think what Pat and I are really, even Laura, we're trying to get is to say, hey, Ashland Community County needs this facility. How can we work with you to try to see if there's some grants? And that grant would ultimately help pay for your time and energy. So that's kind of what I'm thinking as a one-off, but I really see a benefit, and you and I can speak more offline now that I've kind of met you, because there's some ideas about, you know, even Meals on Wheels and other things that I think, not that that's her, but again, all these things are starting, like, so just what you've been talking about with the loans and the experience about who gives those.
Sure.
I could make myself, I don't work for a bank locally. So anyways, we'll talk after.
Okay, and a couple of things that I would add to that, Blake. First of all, when we look at Wisconsin as a whole, there's a lot of remote rural communities that have the same issues that we do, whether it's housing or it's lack of childcare, it's addiction, it's lack of mental health care, right? In the communities that we see that are making real progress in spite of all of these challenges are the ones that have figured out that if you can form partnerships between the local municipalities with the local economic development agency and private businesses, that you can get a lot done, because each of us have different ways we can leverage our legal structure. So for instance, there's grants that AEDC can apply for that the county can't, right? And vice versa. And maybe it's the city that can only apply for a particular grant, right? And the more people the more organizations that you can cite and provide a support letter in your grant applications, the higher that you score for these, right? And the communities that have figured that out, that if you can form strong collaborations and partnerships with multiple entities, and that you all have a concentrated economic development plan, which we do for Northwestern Wisconsin, the more likely you are to be able to get money to help you make progress on these events. Okay. Another thing I would say is that the county has a member on the ADC board of directors. Dan Grady comes to all of our meetings, shares information with us. We share information with him. We also have the City of Ashland administrator on there. Our board is about 15 people, but there is a process for providing information back and forth on how we can work together to make sure that we're all agreed on what our priorities are and what we have to address first. But one more thing, I am happy to give anybody a tour of the AEDC facility to sit down and talk to you about the programs, what we see as the challenges and opportunities right now. AEDC will be revisiting our strategic plan, which we just did just prior to the pandemic. And again, in our board meeting yesterday, we were like, we need to do it again. The whole landscape has changed. And we've made a lot of progress on our strategic plan from a couple of years ago too. So it's time to revisit that. Love to talk to anybody.
Pat?
In response to a couple other comments here, I do recognize that if we are going to ask the EDC to do specific things, we need to make sure that there's sufficient funding. Both the county and the city provide money, but to my knowledge, at least in public meetings with the body that votes, there's essentially little at best, and generally no direction on what to do with that money. And therefore, you make decisions on how best to use that money as opposed to the bodies that give you that money.
Yes.
My strong feeling is, and it's been this way for a long time, going back to my early days on the city council, is that elected body has a responsibility to give direction on what they would like to see with that money. When you get grants, are deliverables. There needs to be documentation that you're delivering what you are asked to do. And this body, I believe we need to do better on that. But we also need to recognize that because we have not been giving that direction, you've been deciding what to do with that, and therefore have started activities that you have in play that, in all likelihood should continue if we decide there are some things we would like you to work on. So we need to transition the workload from what we would like you to work on if we identify some things, and then dovetail that with the capacity that you have either at present or develop as other things reach their completion. So we do need to be sensitive to that and make sure we fund it. But I really would like us to identify some things that we want to see worked on, and then to document those activities. Because we're all going to have different priorities, but as the finance committee, we also have the economic development responsibility, and other than providing some money, we haven't provided any direction, and that's on us.
I can hear what you're saying, Pat, and I agree with the fact that accountability for how that money is used is a basic need. Our fundraising drive and the contributions that we get from businesses and from local municipalities goes into our operating expenses. So when the county gives me $50,000, I don't say that it's specifically going to this particular activity. It's going to help make sure that we have an assistant or a executive director that's paid, that we're paying our accountant, that we're paying for all our just base level expenses in order to keep us going. The extra grant money we come in allows us to do these extra programs. So the veterans program was a grant. Of course, the diverse business assistance is a grant. The two new people that we hired, that was all grant funded, right? And they have specific things they need to do. I would respectfully ask that if you require us to do extra things, that there be some money attached to that. If it's a specific thing with deliverables that you need, because the money that we're getting right now helps us keep AADC viable and stable.
Okay, thank you, Carver.
You're
Matter of
welcome.
fact, I think probably within a week, I want to stop over and chat with you as well, so
Lovely. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
thank you. Need to go, M3 insurance, do we have someone online?
Yep, I'm here.
Kristen, I made you co-host.
Perfect. So I can share my screen.
Yes.
Sorry,
No.
trying to find the right button, you guys. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Terry, for your comments too. I do believe I'm going to address that in my presentation. But if you have follow-up questions, obviously I'm happy to answer those or talk through them. So we did receive your final renewal from
Kristen, can you
BPA.
make the screen bigger? It's hard to see.
Sure. Yeah, is this better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. I'm gonna go down one just so we can see that. Is that still okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So we did receive your final renewal from Pan American and BPA. So it was less than we had originally projected, which I think is great news for everybody. I'm going to just share with all of you that I've been delivering some very high renewals, and we've seen a lot of increases this year for a lot of groups. So 11.9 is a really fair renewal. Your claims, if we move to the top of our forecast, this is a great picture kind of the last couple years. So this column right here shows the previous rolling 12 months, and then this is the current rolling 12 months. But you can see here that you guys have had a significant decrease in overall claims over the past rolling 12 months, which is great news. This is your pharmacy spend, which we're going to address next. We do have some ideas similar to what we presented last year, but we would like to encourage participation due to some recent changes within your plan. And then here is the less pooled claims, which means what was taken out for stop loss to pay previous rolling 12 months and current rolling 12 months. So you can also see that that is a significant decrease as well. With all of that being said, your calculated claims for 2023, we're seeing at about $2,564,857. That was hard. And then right here, you can see your individual cost, administration cost for your plan. So we take that number times the projected claims, we add those together, and we project your spending for overall expenditures for next year to be about $3.5 million with stop loss and the administration cost from the third-party administrator. That gives us an overall increase of about 11.9%. So here are our proposed funding rates for you guys to consider. Again, this does feel like a fair renewal, knowing that you guys have had higher than average claims over the last 2 years. As an overall snapshot of where your plan is currently, this is the most current snapshot. It's called our Health Plan Performance Monitor. This shows you're running right at about 100% of a funding ratio, which we can see from prior month is down about 4%, and prior year to date is down about 3%. So again, we're moving in the right direction. We really do see this as, yes, it's an 11.9% increase, but comparatively, we think it's a very fair increase from the providers at this point. So this is your current snapshot. You can see we had a couple really high months, and then everything has come down and steadily staying down for the last few months. Any questions specifically on the health piece? Okay. I'm gonna move on. Next, we also did some
Kristen?
project, yep.
Are these patterns with our healthcare plan, are these typical of everybody right now because of the, monkey wrench
Yeah.
of COVID and such?
Laura, I'll be honest, your plan is actually running better than I see a lot of my self-funded plans running over the last rolling 12 months. So the
Really
trend
like
we've
to
most
hear that.
recently, what?
I said, I really like to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it truly, the trend that we're seeing and really have our underwriting team has kind of dug into in the last month is that what we are seeing is that at the end of last year, there was a lot of our groups had significant claim increases, where you guys have actually remained a little bit more steady in those first few months of the year. So we can see from October through, really February, those 5 months, yes, there was a little bit of a change here. This orange line, the change there is that the original plan changes, well, it's the plan changes that were made, right? Going from your previous plan to your current plan. But truthfully, you guys have remained closer to that orange line than we've had other groups remain. And where we have seen the most of it was at the end of last year of 21. It kind of feels like everyone from the COVID pieces that had been happening over the past few years, everyone kind of just rushed in and got a bunch of things done, is what it appears. But so you guys truly are trending in a more average and positive way than we're seeing other self-funded groups.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question. So the last 12 months are good. The previous 20 or 12 months, this is based on a 24-month kind of pool, right? This increase is kind of based off that. And so like next year, let's say we're having this discussion and we're back being good and we're below, it would be assumed that we wouldn't have an increase, right? Like we're trending the right way, or is it always just going to go up?
So I think we have some options to look at with that. So generally we see trend, so meaning rate of inflation, just general overall cost increases. We're seeing that trend to be at about 6.5%. So I would hesitate to say we could get a 0. However, with a self-funded health plan and putting into practice some of the pieces that Terry had mentioned earlier, I do think there could be an opportunity for us to stay closer to plan neutral. But I would say having a good claims year for the next 12 months could put us in a position to be at, more of a single digit renewal versus being in the double digits. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. It's kind of like a roundabout because I hesitate to say I can get you to a 0. It is always my goal to keep plans cost neutral. So one of the pieces that we looked at this year, there's some recent, in the last 6 months, pharmacy increases for your plan. And we started to see that uptick. And so we went out and took a look at some different pharmacy options. You guys are currently with Servue, which is based on Milwaukee. They are a very traditional pharmacy option. So they have contracts. They talk a lot about AWP. And they run very traditionally. You guys receive rebates from them, which are your first quarter and your quarter 2 rebates are about to be received. But it's a very, what we would say in the industry, more traditional model with pharmacy. What we have found in the last couple of years is that we found some kind of out of the box pharmacy companies, pharmacy benefit managers to work with, 2 of which I have presentations and brief summaries for you on. One of them is called Capital RX. So this again looks more towards the traditional model. They talk in here about the AWP and what those cost breakdowns are. So this would be an example. They do believe that they can come in and show us about a $97,000 in savings from current year to next year, right? So that's a significant savings. I definitely think it's worth us considering. It is still in the very traditional pharmacy benefit manager. It's just a more transparent model within that. So this is a partner of ours. The other partner, and I would say the one that we have been working a fair amount with, is actually called Scout RX. They are a concierge pharmacy. They work with Proact as the back-end pharmacy. What Scout RX does is partner with you and the employees very directly. So they do a lot of hand-holding when it comes to employees, and they make sure that employees are getting what they need timely and in the right way. They have multiple different programs that they use, one of which is specialty programming. You can see the savings listed here that they believe they can save your plan. They also have international copay card savings, which means that they're working with employees on brand and some specialty medications. They're getting those drugs from Canada or through a copay assistance program. The Canada piece is FDA regulated. So as long as it is a 90-day or less script, it is FDA approved. Drugs from Canada are on average are costing about 40 to 60% less than the drugs that we're paying for here in the United States. And then there's a reprice savings. So just some of the savings that they get. They do see some fee savings they could provide you as well. They believe the maximum savings they could show was 150. They are projecting 120 because they know not everyone necessarily wants to choose to participate in this. And so they do believe that they could save you some significant dollars. The other part that comes with the Scout RX proposal is that they do a guaranteed savings in 13 months of $75,000. And if we do not save that $75,000, then they will give you $30,000 of that because it's a penalty for failing to meet the 13-month savings guarantee. So between the two proposals, I think we could see savings with either one of them. I do like the idea of Scout RX and the fact that they're doing a savings guarantee. Their savings are also calling for a little bit more than the Capital RX savings is calling for. So truly it is up to you. The other piece that I would say about Scout RX is they have a truly concierge service. So an employee, as an example, if we were to move to them for January 1st, we would proactively get them the specialty and brand information for employees. We would do proactive outreach to employees. We would encourage them to take the phone calls from Scout RX because we do believe that it would not only save them money, but it will also save the plan money. And they hold the employee's hand through the entire process. So they're a very valued partner of ours. Capital RX also a valued partner, just not quite as hands-on as Scout RX can be. Any
Just to add to
question?
that, just to add to that, we have about 4 prescriptions out there that cost together $30,000 a month for just 4 prescriptions. So that's what this is addressing.
Right. Thank you, Dan. So yeah, so these savings also are not taken into account on our forecast because that forecast is really taking a snapshot in time of where you are for the last 24 months and moving it forward. So we would also be able to count on these savings moving into 2023.
Kristen,
Yeah,
is there a representative from either one of these on the call?
there is not, Laura. I realized that after this morning, we were kind of getting our stuff together and I realized we should. What I would like to offer is that I invite them to the next meeting and have them present. If we make this decision before the end of the year, the employees are only going to have a better experience in either situation, meaning the savings. So I do think there is an opportunity for us to have them come on and give a 10-minute spiel on their program.
Yeah, I have a whole list if you want to hold up. And I don't know if you can answer any of these questions because I
Yep.
still have questions about carve outs. There's biosimilars, there's open versus
Mhm.
closed formularies,
Yeah,
alternative treatments that may be cheaper or maybe not be covered or available that may be better than some pain meds. And then again, boom, there's that medical tourism. Thank you, Terry, because you know it was coming up.
Yep.
But, you know, I,
So,
I like numbers, so at least Capital RX had some actual medication breakdowns and stuff too. I like the Scout RX, and puppies are great, but there's not a lot of information in here, so, you know.
so
Like
Laura,
I
I
said,
can,
there's like a summary page, otherwise everything else says, you know, we just did this wonderful little thing and
yeah.
that's an estimate based on, you know, somebody else's junk, which gives me no information for us.
Yeah, so this is your actual claims, Laura. We did provide them with your claims. So this is your dollars that you spent in the last, we sent them de-identified claims file. So that is, both companies had access to that. We gave them both similar information. As similar as we could, meaning Capital RX ended up with 1 month less data than Scout RX. So there's the total difference is 348 and Capital RX is saying it's 318. Oh no, they are saying it's 339. So
Opposite.
it is the same data. So what I can tell you is it's an open formulary. They are not in the business of trying to change what kind of medication someone is on. They believe, they are pharmacists who started this company. And so they do believe that that is the relationship between the doctor and the patient. So when they are matching drugs, so for Canada as an example, it is an exact match to the prescription that the employee is on that we're also seeing the savings on. So it is not a different formulary for that or different form for that drug. It is the exact same match.
Yeah, well, at this point, Humira is just about ready to lose their patent, so.
I know.
They've been shuffling and there are biosimilars out there that work too that are way cheaper. Cause as you look at that price for the Humira that's listed on there, that's, you know,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere between 10 and 12 shots of Humira for the year. So, but what is I mean, I get their, I get their push for this. I understand between a patient and a doctor and such, but that when it comes to us and offering these other alternatives, it's a cost savings for us too. And it may be just exactly the same or pretty close since they're biosimilars. You know, it saves us cost too. I'd like to know the difference because I think Capital RX also has it listed as an open formulary on theirs.
Mm-hmm. I believe it is the same. And the
Okay.
reason we do open formulary is because we want to be able to have these conversations, right, with doctors, patients, and make sure we're getting the right medication for the right person instead of, so we're not eliminating things. Lots of times what people are talking about right now is carving
Carve
out
out.
specialty. And this is in some ways a carve out of specialty, but by giving access to everyone to provide those drugs in a different way than through the health, than coming up with paying the pharmacy for them. So some of it is shipping, some of it is manufacturer's rebates, some of it is the copay card. So yeah. Do you want me to set something up with both of these companies to be able to speak to those specific questions, Laura? Or do you want me to get them answered and send them over?
Honestly, I'd rather hear the answers. I don't know what everybody
Okay.
else on the committee thinks, but you know, not having them here means I can't grill them at all. So, and when it comes to this, I mean, do you guys think, are you open to that? There seems to be a lot of head nodding, so I would prefer
Okay.
that, you know, just to have, like I said, you know, at least Capital RX went through and gave us some direct, here's what our costs are for these things, here's where we can save you. And, you know, like I said, puppies are great, but in these, like, here's the specialty savings kind of thing, but I'd like to see the comparison and a little more information.
Okay. I'm happy to set that up. So I will work with Dan and Heather on getting that set up.
Cool beans.
With the savings that we are, not savings, I apologize, but with the difference in budget versus the difference in what the renewal is this year, I would like for us to consider working with Alithya, which is the transparency tool. So Terry, that's what will help us drive employees. So part of the hesitation and some of the reasons that it hasn't gone into effect yet is truly because I need the budget to be able to do it. So Alithya is a per employee per month cost. It is about $5 per employee per month. So that would be about an $8,000 annual cost. With that, we would also need to take into consideration the budget for incentives. I do think because there was a budget that was higher than what the health insurance renewal came in as, I also think there's going to be expected savings potentially with the pharmacy. So I would like us to consider doing something like that for 2023. Those are the tools that I use with the rest of my groups in order to help that medical tourism happen. My team at M3, we do have a healthcare practice group, and we are actively meeting with the hospital in Ashland and the hospital in Hayward to discuss what we can do from a bundled packaging and a lower cost on procedures for moving forward. I don't know if you guys saw this in the news, but it looks like Marshfield Clinics and the Duluth Essentia are also considering a merger or an acquisition in the upcoming year. So as they continue to work through that, I think that will also bring us some additional information and pieces that we can look at from a financial perspective. There's,
Kristen,
oh, yep,
how do you spell whatever that interface was?
Alithya. So
Yeah.
it's A-L, and actually I can share the webpage here, Laura.
That would be cool.
Yep, let me stop sharing this and share. So, oh, sorry guys, give me 1 second. I'm just apparently not used to using this screen. There we go. So in Greek, Alithya means truth in Greek. So the person who started this company is truly here to help companies make sure that they understand, help individual employees make sure they understand what their potential savings are and what they can look at. So this is an advocacy service. They work, your employees would work with an individual rep when they call in. They do have a web-based service, but what we have found from best practice is that it is better to have the employees use the phone number and actually speak to a person. And they talk to someone. They do need to have some information about what they need to have done. So again, these are the shoppable procedures. We would say this is not emergent or urgent care procedures, but it is things that, you know, example, I need to have a total knee replacement next year. I'm going to call Alithya and say, hey, I need to have a total knee replacement. Is there an opportunity for an advocate to look into this for me? They have access to some basic plan information, meaning what network your employees are using. How can we make sure that we have the codes for the procedure that they need to have done? They ask some basic questions. They do all the research for the employees, and then they send them the information. And usually there are 2 to 3 options, and it goes from lowest cost to increase in what those look like. And then employees get to choose, still have choice as to where they go, but they understand the cost and the transparency of what that is going to look like. Now, depending on what procedures are being done, we do have groups that pay out incentives on those. So an example would be an MRI. So an MRI probably costs between $300 and $500. So we have a new Smart Scan MRI that's opening in Eau Claire. I realize location-wise, that's still a 3-hour drive for employees from Ashland. So we have to take into account what their gas would be, if they're also going to need to stay overnight, what that travel cost would be. But often those MRIs that are going to be at Smart Scan are going to be $650 for a non-contrast and 850 for a contrast. We generally see that as significant savings in the market. And so employers then pay an incentive to that employee for making that choice. And they give them anywhere between 500, 250 and $500 on an MRI as an example. On a knee surgery, generally we say, anything where the savings created is going to be more than $10,000 or $20,000. We oftentimes see $1,000 incentive to employees.
Hey, just one quick, so the Capital RX one has some interesting, I feel like it's just way more for someone in
Detailed.
it just got more. And then there's also some validation on the second page of, that they're doing this, that people are recognizing them.
Mhm.
Again, the dog is nice, but there's no examples of, how they've done this or even just talk of them. So instead of having me to go Google Scout
Yeah.
RX, and I think just validating the company. And then have we considered also about the current provider? Obviously, they have a relationship with us today. If we go and get these proposals, is our current provider getting an opportunity to do last and best, or is it just done with them?
I am happy to go last and best. What I will tell you from my practice is that they don't have a lot of things to compromise on, meaning their contract is already set in place. Their fees are already set up, oftentimes for a year or up to 3 years in contracts with the pharmacies that they're partnering with. So we have not seen a pharmacy benefit manager like ServU be able to come back and actually reduce their pricing. Now, I appreciate your thought process, and I am more than happy to go back to them and say, hey, here's the options. This is what we're looking at. The group would really like to be able to stay with you, but we're going to need some significant cost savings in order to do that.
And
Is that
Chris-
Yep.
Kristen, and then with the wellness plan, are we pretty set with rolling with that and then pulling this all into?
Yep, and Dan told me that the wellness plan was approved, so we're good there. I, again, would like to get the approval to put in Alithya and have some amount of budget, meaning the budget that we had in place versus the renewal dollars, some amount of dollars that we could possibly use for incentive to be able to get the employees to encourage the tourism. I will tell you this, and I've said this before to Dan and Heather, I believe into this call, I do have back-end access to Alithya. So if there are employees who come in and say, hey, I need to have a total knee replacement, I'm happy to do that research and make sure that we are getting them to the low-cost, high-quality provider. Alithya just seems to be the best tool that we have access to that people are using.
Okay.
And yes, the wellness plan has been approved. And so that is moving forward for next year. The only other thing I had on my agenda to discuss was the dental. I know I briefly talked about that previously. Your dental plan currently is underfunded by a significant dollar amount. So our team did go in and do the back end research to take a look at how we could right this ship with dental.
Kristen,
So-
can you make the screen bigger, please?
Yep. I was just about to do that, Dan. So we did that work, right? We did very similar to looking at your self-funded health plan. We looked at your self-funded dental plan. You can see the cost has been an increase over the last rolling 12 months versus the decrease in it. And so we do believe that there would need to be some significant pricing changes. So currently you guys are charging 25 for an employee, 35 for employee plus one, and 50 for family. And where we see the greatest discrepancy is truly in the employee plus one and the employee plus family coverage. COBRA rates are listed here. You could use those and right the ship, right? And definitely make that happen. However, I think the fairest way to go and the probably least somewhat disruptive would be to choose to use our proposed funding rates. And that would mean the employee would also have, the single employee would also have a small increase. But if we tier this, if you were to choose to tier this out internally, then we do believe we could get your dental plan back to the positive versus being in a negative. Any questions on that? Okay, my follow-ups are, I'm gonna work with Dan and Heather on the next date to have Capital RX and Scout RX present. Unless I hear otherwise, I will work through that. I would like to have us consider the Alithia piece and be able to move forward with that and some amount of incentive to be able to use next year for employees. Otherwise, we are locked in on the renewal, and we can make the pharmacy change after you guys have heard from both the pharmacy companies.
Ed, you got a question?
On the Capital RX and what they label as paid. Sorry. missed it.
Microphone, thank you.
Thank you.
On the Capital RX, what they label is the bottom of page 1, which is the second sheet on the document. In the middle there, they got savings minus 27%. Is that a generic number from all of their clients, or is that intended to be specific to us?
I actually believe it is your numbers. So it would be about 27%, and Scout RX had a very similar number. I think their percentage was around 27 or 28%. So it is similar in that sense, from a savings cost reduction perspective.
So then on page 2 at the bottom, it says net plan cost difference, they got minus 30.8%. So what is that number then? If the
Well,
27% is intended to be to us? My
That's a great-
interpretation was that 27% was generic with all our clients, and the minus 30.8% was specific to us. That was my interpretation. And is that correct or not correct?
I do believe you're correct.
And then when we do have these folks here to discuss to it, one of the questions, at least to me, is going to be if we've got numbers that are specific to both of us, it's Capital RX is minus 30.8 and the other is 27.88. What would we consider besides the bottom line number on going with them? And I think one of the key things to me at least would be how much support do the employees and staff get in terms of these plans, so that, you know, if they get good assistance, that's valuable, especially if it saves staff time in terms of answering questions for employees. So.
Great.
okay.
Yeah, I will, Laura, I would also, if you're okay sharing, I would love to see your questions just to make sure that I can prep both of these companies to be able to answer the questions thoroughly. So if you're willing to share them, I would, with Dan and Heather, they could get them to me, or I can put my email in the chat box as well.
I can make them into questions. Mostly it's a list.
That's great, but either way, I would love it, whether it's the list or questions. So I will put my email in the chat box, Laura, so you can just send those to me.
What do you need from us to work? I mean, can we see a plan? Is there some kind of plan that we need to see to work with this Alithia? With numbers
Yep.
and proposed incentives and such?
Yep, I absolutely will share that detailed information with Dan and Heather as well. And Ross, who is one of the founders of that company, would also happily jump on the call next time to talk through this and kind of talk through what he sees in general and the pieces that we can look at.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
Okay, great. Thank you. I will do my follow-ups. Laura, I'm going to put my email in the chat box. And then if anyone has any additional questions, Heather and Dan, if you can relay them to me. I do have to leave for a seminar here, so I need to bounce from this call. But please let me know what the other questions are as well.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Item next, we need to go into closed session. Do we need a motion for this?
This is Laura. I'll make that motion that we go into closed session.
Ron's.
All those in favor signify by,
We have
no,
to do
a
roll
roll call, please. Laura, Lori?
Mike Berlin,
Yes?
Laura Negro,
Yes.
Blake Ellefson, Pat
Yes.
Kinney,
Yes.
Ron Stendor,
Yes.
Okay, Lori, will you please put everybody in the waiting room except for yourself?
Thank
Obviously.
you.
I don't think so, no. Do you want them to stay? No.
Pick the garbage can. Closed session is like an executive session, it's just a board. Right?
Okay, Dan, I have everybody in there except myself, so I don't know if you want me in closed session or if you want to put me in the waiting room.
Who's Ronald's iPhone?
I would assume Ron Stendor.
Nope, he's in the room here with us.
Okay, we're gonna put him in there too.
Okay, and Lori, you can stay on.
Okay, let me pause recording here, please.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
That's okay, go
Oh,
ahead.
Okay, so the budgets are in front of you. This budget, since we're not done with the wage study and there's still questions about the wage study going forward, this budget contains a 3% raise for all county staff. If there is a line in here under contingency, which is in the second section called under general for $448,000. That's money that we can use to implement the wage study at a later date this summer when executive committee is happy with the results and finance committee is ready to move forward with it. So the money is sitting there in the budget for when we're ready to implement. But in the meantime, this provides a 3% raise for everyone, except for myself and deputies who have contracts. So what we're looking at is a decrease in the dollar per thousand. That's largely because equalized value went up dramatically, but it is still less. It's at 445 this year. Our debt levy is going to be slightly less, about $50,000 less. So we're looking at $1.34 per thousand for a total of 579, which is about 75 cents cheaper than last year. The only thing that went up is the library levy, which is a separate levy, and that's the request of the library system. So I'm happy to answer questions.
I don't have a question. I just want to register my displeasure with us not following through with another plan again. This has been a symptom of the things that we've done, is to let things drop, and we could have had a little more action on it, in my opinion. Again, then we hold the people that our employees get held hostage in all of this, waiting for us to decide, do we go with one hand or do we go with the other? Because we said we were doing this one, but now we're going back to the other thing. So here we are again.
I struggled with the wage study and we chose to implement it, which we're now looking at next year. So the 3% to me, I think I can get behind. I just seconding Laura's conversation is that even the town of LaPointe discussion is going to come back to the whole board, and the recommendations that we make here are not binding, even though I would like them to be, but that is part of our issue here is that, like, if we all approve this in the finance committee, will this be able to pass the entire Ashland County Board? That's our question. And if we can't, then what are we doing here? So that's kind of my high level here is saying, ultimately, there's a lot of things going on here. And Dan's done a good job of getting to this point, but in the future, we're gonna have to implement the wage study.
Right.
And then that creates, again, additional constraints on the budget long-term. Our department heads, and this is, I think, part of it is that have to kind of buy into the decisioning of the board more. Not that I was a part of the highway commission, but they kicked it back, right? And said, no, we don't want to be a part of this. And there's 17 employees. If Health and Human Services, they don't want it, so if the board makes a decision, it has to be bought in by the employees. And I think that's my concern is that we may not get certain division heads buy-in right away, but that's our job to make these decisions. And then as uncomfortable as that could be. So I'm, again, agreeing with Laura, we just need to be able to make a decision today on these things and then hopefully they're binding.
I'm going to echo some of the same feelings. When we approved the wage study, I certainly thought we would be implementing it sooner than we did. If there's some good reasons to work through some things, I accept that, I understand that. And I believe that most, if not all of that discussion on working through things should be done with the administrator and department heads and employees as appropriate and not being discussed at the board meetings like it was. We clearly don't have buy-in across the board. I shouldn't say board, but through all of our department heads, et cetera. To me, it feels like, at times they're bypassing working through the administrator and then working, as a group of employees, in outside of public meetings with the administrator to work through this and find some balance. In my early days on the city council, we had every department head present and that didn't work so good because then, every department had to make the case for what they wanted directly to us, but there's only so much money. And then you had an elected body trying to decide how to allocate that money. And, the elected body is not the expert. You hopefully have hired an administrator who's the expert to work through it. It worked better when we decided we were going to have the department heads work with the administrator outside of a meeting, work through these issues, and then have the administrator bring a recommendation based on those discussions. That actually worked better. And I think the key thing to me of what made it work better, and this is what the administrator told us, is they could have those discussions outside of a public meeting, but that really required at the end of the day for the development of trust. And that means if one's going to get something this year because they really, really need it, someone else in that department head's going to have to trust, okay, I'm not getting what I want this year because somebody else needs something else more, but I'll get it in a year or maybe two down the road, or maybe I won't get it because it's not as important as some other things. I think those discussions should be held outside of our board meetings and likely our finance meetings too. But it does put the responsibility on the administrator, and then the administrator should be able to answer those questions. My sense is we could have implemented the wage study for 2023 at the start if we didn't have people thinking they could advocate for more by doing something other than following the wage study. And then one final comment on the 3%. The 3% for the first half of the year, to me, is kind of an attractive number because I know it's not as much as they would like and should get, but it's a number where it incentivizes people to come to an agreement and collectively as a group say, yep, we want to move ahead with the wage study, because once we do, we're collectively going to be better off. So there's a carrot there for people to get on board with this.
I just want to echo what I've said in the past 3 meetings with regards to this wage study. Can this be implemented for 23? And the Answer was affirmative. Yes, it can be. Only thing, there are certain parameters that came in front of us that, such as roads came, they didn't want to buy into this. And the wage study group did not come back to the managers, directors of the programs to finalize and get the managers to buy into this. And while there's a number of things that were incomplete, in addition to that, I want to echo what Laura had indicated at the last meeting. I believe she had indicated we still got time to make this wage study work. And well, my opinion is the timing is not there for the wage study group to come in and meet with the managers, and because you know, roads wanted to do this, you know, got health and human services, all of a sudden everybody, if roads can't do it, we don't want to do it, and it's falling apart. And we obviously need to develop a foundation here, and I'll agree with you that this 3%, I can live with this. Our employees are looking at 8.6%, but that's not in the budget. We can't make it. And of course, we're not going to pass a deficit budget. That's not in the cards either. So Dan here's doing, I would say, an excellent job juggling these numbers around, making it so that we can pass this, make a recommendation to the county board to make their decision. Now, when this comes to the county board, what are they going to do? I know darn well what they're going to do. They're going to take a poll vote, and they can vote this thing down. And okay, what do we do on this committee? Why were we appointed to this committee? This is why we've got on this committee to try to. Matter of fact, back in the election time, a lot of our old timers says we created this problem. It's up to us to fix it. Can anybody dispute that? I don't think so, because that's what some of the what they call it, county board members said. Okay, I don't see those guys on this committee. We're the same people that were here last year, or the last term, except for Blake. But I appreciate Blake's opinion over here too, because they're all credible. You know, he's bringing new light or you know, a different twist to this thing. And well, that's what you see. You know, that's what democracy is all about. You know, everybody contributes. Let's get her done. Thank you.
I'm just wondering where the 3% came from.
It came from being able to have enough money to implement the wage study later.
Okay, then next time we need to discuss that during committee meetings, because this just came to us as this. So I think all of these discussions need to happen during the committee meetings. So then it's out in the open. If there's problems or issues, then we need to have them in the committee meetings. And I understand the whole thing about at the county board meeting, but at a certain point, we have to let other people know how we arrived at these decisions, because I don't know what the perception is, because if other board members feel that there's more room in the budget, either they're not paying attention while we're having committee meetings, which they're totally open to come to or attend, virtual or in person, but somehow our county board members have to feel that they can trust our committee. So there's a whole communication issue here, evidently.
Well, the administrator has said in these meetings, and I think it gets missed, is that if they want to do more than what's proposed, it all goes on the debt levy. We're raising taxes that much more. There is no coffer with money sitting there, because for many, many years, the county board doled out money, you know, as it pleased. And that's what's got us to this point. And that's why it's either we're raising taxes to fund things or we're cutting something. There's no piggy bank. There's no pot of money left like there used to be. And then the 8.6%, I mentioned it last meeting, but I think it's important everyone understands it, including the employees. That was a number from an early discussion on the budget as far as parameters to work with. And at the time, 8.6 for inflation was what we were running that month. But they were anticipating inflation would come down later in the year, which so far is not the case very well. But that was just a high number based on what we thought the ceiling would be for inflation for this year, just so that we could work on a budget so that we could stay within that parameter. It did not mean that they were getting guaranteed an 8.6, just like the low number that was proposed, which nobody seems to remember. It also meant that they weren't necessarily getting the lowest number. So I think there are people who are disappointed that the proposed wage increase from the study was not the 8.6 or something more. But they need to look at everything. And then the other thing about the wage study, one of the employees spoke to this, and I mentioned it too, is part of that wage study is are you paying your current employees with the current pot of money fairly based on job descriptions with others? And that translates into, oh, this person should get more of the pot of money, but that also means somebody else is going to get less. Doesn't mean everybody's getting a big raise. It's divvying it up more fairly based on job descriptions, experience, et cetera, when compared to others. It's the same pot divvied up in different ways. And then the regional competitiveness, that's the part that raises wages to the extent that we're capable. So I think there's some misunderstanding of expectations of what was going to happen with this. And that I really think is the administrator, I'm sure you've been going through this with them, but I think some reminders of tempering down the expectations that some have had.
I'll share this with the group for the sake of Blake hearing this. This time last year when Dan came on board, we were looking at our spending, and we were looking at a $260,000+ deficit at the end of the year. And what I've been telling Dan here is, gee, last year we sold a piece of property over Madeline Island. We realized $400,000+, which put us back in the black. Well, we don't have that this year, and we can't count on that for next year. All we can count on is what Dan has put in front of us. I'm the new guy in the block too. This is only my second term and stuff like that, but one of the things I made mention to Dan here more recently is that some of the operations that we have going on here within the county, we need to turn this thing around to where we're making money as opposed to spending money all the time. We gotta, we gotta be ingenious or creative to make that happen. Kind of like the thing down on the roads. Okay, Bayfield County or Shawinigan Forest out there is hiring Ashland County Roads Department to go out there and do work on the roads because they're reliable, they know what they're doing. Bayfield County's got us doing Fish Creek over here because, okay, Ashland County is cheaper than a contractor and does better work than Bayfield County does. It's not that Bayfield County couldn't do it themselves, but we can do it cheaper and we can do it better. So those are revenues that's coming into Ashland County roads. But what about other programs? How can we turn this thing around to where our programs are making money? Whether it be grants or physical or there's got to be a mechanism there. Okay, gotcha. Oh, nobody's home.
I just want to make one comment about the 8.6. So when I looked at the wage study, it was not possible for us to give an 8.6% raise to all employees. It would have made the wage study basically next year impossible to implement because some of the people that weren't going to get 8.6 now we're going to be at this much higher level and we couldn't cut it back. Right. And so the wage study actually required us to kind of be, and I think that's where Dan did a good job. And I don't know exactly where 3% came from or how it came, but at least 3% can get us to a line item budget that isn't funding deficits. And I think the whole board, if they're if they're looking at this correctly and we make this decision, I think we can get people on board with.
With the 3% to start the year, when the wage study is implemented, if that happens, you're looking at the compounding effect of the 3% with whatever comes next, correct?
that would be included. So,
So the base would be bigger, so whatever comes after that would
Well-
be based on wages after the 3%, so they get.
no, before the 3%. So if, just to make the numbers easier, if the wage study said you're supposed to get $100 more, well, you're getting 30 of it now. Right, basically.
3 of it?
What?
You said,
You're getting 3%. If you're supposed to get a 10% raise, you're getting 3% of that right away. So, so like if you were making 10,000, you're supposed to get 10, well, what's it? 100,000 be easier. All right, so say you're supposed to get moved from 100,000 to 110,000. You'll be moving to 103,000 right now. And then when we implement the wage study, it'd be 110,000.
okay, so the second increase is going to be based on the wages at the end of 2022.
Right.
And not on the wages after the 3%.
Right, otherwise we're gonna blow through the whole contingency. I mean, and because then because to implement it, then we'd have to come up with $600,000 and we only have 400 and some.
I was wondering if Ron was gonna
No.
make the motion. Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the 2023 budgets as presented with the 3%.
I'll make a second.
Yeah, motion by Laura, second by Blake to approve the budget as presented at 3% level, bundle level. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Should we roll call it?
You want to hold that?
Let's roll call it.
Roll call, Lori?
Mike Berlin,
Yes.
Laura Negro,
Yes.
Blake Ellison,
Yes.
Pat Kinney,
Yes.
Ron Stendor.
Yes.
Motion carried. Investments,
Okay, investments is in the packet. Sales tax is in the packet. If everybody doesn't mind, I'll just move up to 13. Okay, so I handed everybody out an email I received from John Dickert, who's the head of local government revenue at the DOR. The important things about this are, one, the Department of Revenue decided they are not going to appeal the Seventh Circuit Court decision, appeals court decision. So that means anybody else's name on the suit could appeal to the Supreme Court, but the state is not appealing. So the effect of that is starting in 2023, the county will no longer be settling with the municipalities on the missing taxes, as there are no taxes due. So that means the town of Sanborn is going to not get tax money for 85% of their revenue. Jingles, I think, is like, the numbers are in here. So Jingles will not get 20%. And the actual data is on the third page if you guys want to take a look at it. So the good news for the county is that stops the bleeding. We no longer have to settle with municipalities for tax revenue that we never received. So that's good news for us. And then the other big thing is, I'm not sure if you guys remember, I had mentioned at the county board that we received some money from the federal government as part of a separate part of the ARPA program. We're supposed to get 577,000 this year and 577,000 next year. We've received our first payment. So that is now sitting in a separate bank account for the county board to decide what to do with. It's pretty much unrestricted money and no time limit to spend it. So we have that sitting available for whenever we do something.
I just have one question on the impact of the taxes. So does that mean that the people that, like the school district and Northwood Technical College, are going to be receiving less from the county?
It means that everybody, yeah, the school districts, the tech school, the towns and the county are all going to receive less money. Well, except for the county is not handing out all that extra money.
Yeah, so one of the things, this is tribal property now that has come off the tax rolls, so is Bad River now policing? Ashland Sheriff is still gonna be required to be,
We have a contract with the Bad River Reservation
Okay.
to provide 24/7 law enforcement.
because now we're not getting any taxes from them.
Right.
Does it change our, like, how much we want to ask for, or does that not have any?
Well, they pay for the full cost of law enforcement. So we still have to provide other services though, unless the state legislature were to change that.
So we put out how many years of payments?
$2 million
to all those different
basically.
entities?
About $2 million.
Yeah. So have they provided any kind of guidance on how to undo
Well,
that?
Wisconsin, well, there is a state statute, 74.4, I believe it is. You talk about part of the, yeah, so it's 74.4, which allows the county to charge back for basically illegal taxes. So yes, we can charge back on all those municipalities and school districts and get our money back. Is that something we want to do? Probably not immediately.
Is it a discussion?
Yeah, it would, because it would just make all the same taxpayers, basically the National School District, pay the bill twice. Well, 3 times, because they would have, they paid it, or, well, they paid their taxes originally, then they'd have to pay to get the county back their money. And then if anybody's due to do a refund, they'd have to pay for those. So we're working with the counties association. And I know the Rural School Districts Association is working on it too. And the Towns Association on trying to get the legislature to do a global settlement with during the budget talks this year. After all, the state is the one that violated the treaty in the first place. The state's the one that should clean it up. I know, it's
So we're
hopeful.
gonna bank on that, huh?
Well, no, but
I'm
we're
not
gonna,
holding my
you know,
breath.
before we go after all these other taxing organizations, we should try to get the state to fix it first. And we owe it to our own taxpayers not to hit them up again and again.
So Ashland County is by far the heaviest impacted in the state of Wisconsin.
Correct.
And we're already struggling, like,
Right.
so we're the 3rd poorest county, maybe even 2nd poorest county in all of Wisconsin. So this is just a really big hit. And, ultimately, I know I said this before and not one person even thought of agreeing, or it didn't look like anyone cared, but I know we're not appealing as a county, because I asked Max Lindsay and he didn't even respond to my call.
Right.
So this is gonna take effect, right? Basically,
It's
in
going to take
effect.
effect.
It did, and I think there was still a few days of appealing time, because it had a 90-day.
Yeah, November 14th, I believe.
Exactly, and so are we pretty sure no one's appealing?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't think the townships have the resources to do so. And we don't want to, because then that would mean we'd have to start sending out settlement checks again. And the state said no, and the tech school will say no if the state says no. And I can't see the school district doing it, because in the end, the state should make up their funding. They might get hurt next year. But the way the school formula works, they should still just get extra state revenues going forward. But I do have a meeting with the school district at 1. Yeah, that's information only, but I mean, people should know. I mean. 514, yeah. So the real estate agent showed it to a potential developer. Potential developer is not interested at this time. Decided he has too many other projects going. I did email the city to let them know that it was still available. I'll be talking to Chair Pufall later about whether or not we want to sign a real estate contract, or do we give the city a first shot? I'm sorry. Realtor said between 50 and 100,000.
Okay, did we ever ask anybody else's opinion on it?
Not yet. I just found out yesterday, but
Okay.
I can certainly get a different realtor
Yeah.
to come look at it.
I just think that in our whole scope, we should not direct something towards one, but
Yeah.
get a few opinions. And let them jockey.
Yeah. Well, the cost to repair it's so high is the problem. That's what's dragging its value down.
Is there any reason we can't list the building on the same site where we sell properties that have been taken by tax deed? And see, and put it up for auction?
We could certainly put it up for auction. We'll probably get a lot less for it, but that's certainly an option.
We can put a reserve. That has the ability to have a reserve on it.
That's something we could do.
I think my only worry about the city is it just doesn't go directly back on the tax roll.
Right. And in that respect, even minimal taxes is better than none. So we would rather sell to a private organization just to get it back in the tax rolls. But then, we don't want to step on the city's feet either. If they really want it, they think they can get a higher value on the tax roll, then I don't know.
If they have the time and there's grant funds out there to fix up buildings like that. If they have the time and such, I mean, it would be a good proposal to see.
Like I said, I did email the city administrator and let him know. So I will be talking to the mayor sometime in the near future, so I will let him know too. So we got county board the 15th. Following week is, well, it's also deer hunting. Yeah, so I mean, that's the unspoken holidays. Yeah. So I don't know, when do you guys want to schedule? Do you want to do one for early December?
Microphones, please.
I almost got ran over by a big buck in the woods last year within a few feet as it came charging through. It's true. I had to jump out of the way, literally. Dan, are you anticipating that you're asking the full board to pass the budget at the November meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but we're supposed to have an annual meeting the first Tuesday after the second Monday of the month. And so that will serve as our annual meeting also. But we need to get it into the newspaper next week.
So what do we have to set us up for next year that we should talk about?
I don't know if there's much to talk about in the next few weeks, to be honest.
So are you thinking of meeting in January then?
Well, I would think either early December things will come up for sure by then. I'll be gone December 9th for the wedding.
We do have a good discussion to happen about the economic development. We
Yeah.
can start that.
We could start, that would be a good thing to start in December.
You want to make sure it's on the agenda then?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can invite Carver to that too, if you want.
You know, what I'd like to do too is some of these items on the agenda late today, we had 2 items at well over half hour. And we need to either time limit these guys or pare down our agenda, giving these guys sufficient time to do their presentations. Is that fair? Because we're in the 3rd hour here.
Well, I think in general, the meetings go a lot faster. It's just we're at budget time and there's more stuff to take into account.
Well, this little point thing took a lot of time. And how many meetings?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to bet it's going to pass the county board. I wouldn't want to take that bet. Not from the last county board meeting we had. Because the comment was said at that time, it's not that we're not gonna have a contract with you guys, it's how much the contract's gonna be. And here we come along and say, zero.
The county board will decide what to decide.
Mike's,
The only other question I was gonna say is that we've talked a lot about this M3 and the wellness plan for the county. I think we need to, the employees have been, it seems like asking for it, so we need to do a good job of giving them a time frame that's realistic where we can start actually implementing.
Yeah, wellness plan will be able to implement this January 1. So, and luckily the major departments were involved in creating that, so there should not be any pushback.
We have a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Did we set a meeting date?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
Oh, we can, we can if you want. How about? You want to stay on Thursdays, so December 1st.
December 1st is great. Now I'll make a motion to adjourn. This is Blake.
this is Laura. I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.